Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very, very accomplished professional from Los Angeles, USA, Mr. Doug Howarth. Doug, welcome to the show.
Ashutosh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I love your show. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug is the Chief Executive Officer of Hypernomics Incorporated. He's an author, inventor, and the discoverer of Hypernomics. He's an author. And as I said, I've always said I'm very partial to authors. He's an author of a book titled Hypernomics, Using Hidden Dimensions to Solve Unseen Problems. So, Doug, before we talk hypernomics and your book, tell me
Sure.
about your own journey and what is the concept of hypernomics?
Well, part of my journey, Ashutosh, was that I got a degree in economics and I never quite believed it. And
Okay.
while I went through that, I was actually quite sick. For 30 years, I had a kidney problem
Mm-hmm.
and it prevented me from thinking clearly. So part of what I would do to try to get my blood pressure down was meditation, which I know
Mm-hmm.
you're very much a fan of. And through these deep meditations, I found myself in some dissociative states. And by the time I finally got a kidney from my best friend, Tim, well, when I woke up, my brain started to work differently and it started to toss off old, unsupportable ideas that I saw in the traditional economics. And
Mm-hmm.
it allowed me to open up my mind and see what we can now call hypernomics.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was took decades to get here, but here we are. So,
Hmm. And
yes.
for my viewers and listeners, could you explain what is hypernomics in layman terms?
Yeah, hypernomics in layman's terms is really just looking at how people react to the products that are given to them, be they agricultural products, physical products like a phone or a TV, services. And it turns out that people react to those products in ways that we can actually observe, and they self-aggregate their behaviors, which is to say they form limits when it comes to how much they can buy. So they have this upper limit and an inner limit, sometimes a lower limit and an inside limit. And then at the same time, they also react to the features of the products in the same ways.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's variations, of course, but within those reactions, you can actually find some mathematical ways to describe those variations. And we do that in ways that seem complicated, but it really just puts together things that you already know
Hmm.
into a view you've never seen before, but it turns out it's very important for you to know.
Hmm.
So that's kind of what it does.
Thank you. And what inspired you to explore market dynamics beyond the traditional dimensions?
Well, again, I never quite believed modern economics when I was told that there was that one single
Correct.
equilibrium point of supply and demand. I mean, if you go out and you look at iron ore, for example,
Hmm.
you can see that there's a lot of different iron ore companies, and you can maybe believe there's one price for iron ore worldwide, but iron goes into aircraft and cars and washing
Hmm.
machines. So what inspired me was I actually saw my wife and I were buying a washing machine.
Mm-hmm.
And so we rolled into this big store and she says, I want a washing machine this next time. It's got a bigger drum
Mm-hmm.
than the one we have at home, And I thought, well, capacity versus price. So that would be a two-dimensional problem.
Right.
And then she said, the machine we have at home only has one delicate cycle.
Hmm.
Some of these other machines have two and three. I'd like to have more cycles. And so I
Mm-hmm.
thought cycles and
Is another
capacity
dimension.
versus
Yeah.
price. She's up to a
Hmm.
3D problem.
Hmm.
And so we really liked the machine we were looking at. It was great. And of course, they have the line and it goes up the line and there's the next biggest machine.
Hmm.
And so I liked that one. And I said, what about this one?
Hmm.
And she says, it's too expensive. We can't afford it.
Hmm.
And I realized that we were going to add a quantity of one to the total number of machines that are going to be sold of that type
Hmm.
in this year. And so we were going to add one to the quantity. So she was helping to solve a four-dimensional problem: capacity, cycles, price, and quantity.
Hmm.
And I looked around the store and I realized that everybody looking at every product was doing the same thing at the same time. And they're doing this all intuitively in their heads, and they're
Right.
solving for this. And it turns out that there's mathematical relationships that you can draw together
Mm.
that let you describe that. And that's what hypernomics is about.
What a great example. Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
you explained it so simply. Thank you. My next question is that what in your, based on your research, do you believe are some misconceptions people might have about hypernomics?
Well, I think people look at this and they say, they go 4 dimensions, and they all of a sudden they go kind of bug-eyed. And
Mm.
what I like to tell people is that it really does take, as I said, it takes things you already know
Mm.
and reassembles them into something you haven't seen before. And once you see this new relationship, then you've got a better idea how things work.
Mm.
And that's what it's trying to do for you, is to do this reassembly of things that you know and put it into something that you can use.
Mm.
And so that's what it's doing for you.
Okay. And how have industries like aerospace and defense utilized hypernomics in their operations?
Well, interestingly, we've been hired by companies like Lockheed Martin, where you used to work. I used
Mm.
to work there too.
Mm.
NASA, Virgin Galactic was a very recent
Yeah.
customer.
Mm.
And what we've done for these companies is we've told them how the market is reacting to their products that they're
Mm.
offering for sale. And so we've offered them all direction on what they should do. So, for example, we went to this one aerospace company, and they said they wanted to sell this one plane, and they wanted us to evaluate what their price was. And like some people do, they undervalued what they were offering, because
Mm.
people have a certain value they place on the size of the plane, how fast it can go, its range, and things like that. And so we worked out the value for that. And then the customer asked us a very interesting question. They said, we think our plane is prettier
Mm-hmm.
than the
Okay.
average plane. Could
Mm.
that be worth something? And so we took drawings of all the planes that were in the industry, and then we
Mm.
passed them
Mm.
out to respondents and had them grade it 0 to 10. And it turned out there was a response for the beauty of a plane.
Okay.
And it also turned out our client had a plane that was prettier than the average plane, which was
Mm.
going to add more to their price.
Mm.
So that's how you can use it in
How
aerospace.
incredible. Well, I would
Yeah,
never have thought the looks of a plane, which is on the
yeah,
ground so little, could be a factor, but thank you.
yes,
My next question, Doug, is about multidimensional economics.
yes.
How does multidimensional economics, and I'm going to use a term which I don't understand much about, which is MEE4D, which I've taken from your notes. How does
Right.
multidimensional economics differ from other market analysis tools currently available?
Well, other tools begin in 2D or 3D,
Mm-hmm.
and Me4D, which is the old name for our product, we've now changed it to Hypernomica.
Mm-hmm.
Hypernomica starts in 4 dimensions and
Mm-hmm.
then lets you draw inferences in these 4 dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
So the difference is that it starts in 4 dimensions, and the trick, such as it is, the trick is these are mathematical dimensions and they're not physical dimensions. So you remember when you're in school and you had the little algebra problem, x and y, and you had x equals y, and you've got, x running this way and y running this way. This kind of looks like it's east-west. This kind of looks like it's up and down. But the thing about that math problem is that it doesn't care where it is in space.
Mm-hmm.
That math problem is related to the math problem. And so hypernomics is much the same way. It doesn't anchor itself to physical space. And so that's the reason we're able to do that. And
Okay.
the other trick is that there's no negative dimensions in hypernomics, which is to say you're measuring market things. And so you can have
Mm-hmm.
more cost than you have revenue.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're doing there is you're comparing one non-negative number to another non-negative number. So you don't have any absolute negative numbers. So the trick is we just start at 0 and we go out in every direction from there. It's kind of like being at the South Pole. Instead of calling that 90 degrees south,
Mm-hmm.
we just call that 0, and everything goes away from that in positive
Mm-hmm.
direction.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And again, for my viewers and listeners, can you give us an example of where Me4D provided significant insights for a client? And I don't need any names for clients, of course.
Yeah, I can give you one right here. We I just gave a paper on this. I just won a Best Paper Award
Oh, congratulations.
for this concept here just a couple of weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
And so what we did was, remember how I was saying my wife was, and I were buying a washing machine?
Yeah.
Well, this represents 10 years of buying history for
Mm.
business aircraft. And so,
Mm.
in this axis here, this is the quantity of planes built in 10 years.
Mm.
And this is the price
Mm.
over 10 years.
Mm.
And you see this nice black line up here.
Yeah.
You see this black line here. This is what we call an upper frontier.
Okay.
And so when the price gets this high, people can't afford to buy it anymore. And when it
Mm.
comes out, this is called an outer frontier.
Mm.
When it gets out to this point, there's no more money left in the market. The market is saturated.
Mm.
And so we discovered in 2020 that there was this company that was trying to build something way out here.
Mm.
And it was a supersonic business jet. So
Mm.
their price was right. We
Mm.
validated their price.
Mm.
And the cost they had was correct too. But it turned out that they were way past this outer frontier. In fact, by our analytics, we gave them one chance in 40 of making their target. They wanted to sell 300 units.
Mm.
They're going to be somewhere between 40 and 60. And so in December 2020, if you were to look on my LinkedIn profile, you'd see I called them out then about this. And then I got this angry response just a couple of days later. They had this order that came in.
Mm.
They neglected to say it was all for options, which is to say not real. And we had a little argument going back and forth. They said, "Good for you. You got this order in. You're still not going to make it." And 6 months later, they folded. They went bankrupt.
Mm. Mm.
And that was a billionaire that went bankrupt.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so what we
Wow.
noticed then is that just like when I was buying that washing machine,
Mm.
where we wanted to buy a certain capacity,
Mm-hmm.
this is the capacity for those right here. This is if you were looking at this chart here, this is these are business jets here. These are different models.
Yeah.
This is the cabin volume, which is basically how much space is in there. And so what you're seeing is
Mm.
there's a very good return for space as you increase it. And then over here on this dimension,
Mm.
you're also paying for speed. And so
Okay.
the market's paying for speed and cabin volume,
Mm.
which means that you can figure out the plane that
Okay.
describes that the best way.
Mm.
And so if you're above this value, there may
Mm.
be other features that are at work,
Yeah.
or it may be the case you're overpriced. And if
Mm.
you're below this, you may be
Mm.
underpriced.
Well said.
So this is a three-dimensional system.
Yeah.
So here, this is speed here, cabin volume coming to you and price this way.
Mm.
And the very useful observation then is that this
Mm.
has a price axis. Sorry, things are falling apart here. Hold on,
Okay.
one moment, please.
Yeah. Yeah.
That has a price. This has a price axis too.
Mm.
And what this means is that they share the price axis, and this is the four-dimensional model here.
Wow. Wow.
So this is the insight. So everything is starting from zero here.
Mm.
So that's zero quantity here, price this way, speed this way, and cabin volume this way. This is a
Incredible.
four-dimensional model.
Thank you. Wow. I've never seen a model like this. Thank you.
Well,
I
and,
love
you know,
this.
and we did discover this. We bought, and then the software
Mm.
about which you were talking,
Mm.
we did a patent on that. And the patent office here in the United States says you can't patent mathematics. And he said, we're not patenting the math,
Mm.
which we discovered we're patenting the display of the math.
Mm.
And when we finally got that through to them, they gave us the patent. So that's
Incredible.
it proves that nobody had actually seen this before until now. So we're very excited about it. Interestingly, you were saying that most of your listeners are young people.
Yeah.
People typically our age have a hard time changing their mind. You probably have seen that.
I know.
It's really great that you have a crowd that's younger because they understand you're presenting new ideas to them.
Yeah.
And this is an idea in 5, 10, or 20 years, this will be the only thing taught in schools about how markets work.
Incredible.
And so a lot of your listeners are going to be the first to actually
see
that.
this. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing this model, Doug.
Yeah.
Appreciate it very much. My next question is, given all the technologies that are coming in and now with artificial intelligence, what role does AI play in the development and application of Me4D?
Well, we've got a small application in Me4D for neural networking, which is to say how nodes are connected, and
Hmm.
we're still playing around with that to see how it works. But it's been our discovery that what AI doesn't see is a lot of these relationships in 4D are very highly correlated.
Hmm.
And we think a lot of the reasons that AI can't see them is that it doesn't use a structure like
Hmm.
this to reduce the error. So we think that AI and Hypernomic are going to merge here pretty quickly, and we'll be able to
Hmm.
do different things with the same data. But
Hmm.
that's kind of nascent for us, so that's something we need to examine a little bit deeper.
Thank you.
So we're getting into that.
And Doug, how has the world of academia received all your papers on hypernomics?
Well, that's very interesting. So I'm glad you asked that too. I just did get the best paper overall in a technical
Okay.
conference just a couple weeks ago, and I
Okay.
won several papers before, but this is a
Hmm.
technical conference. So I marched into a very prominent university locally here,
Hmm.
and I showed them these phenomena 5 years ago.
Hmm.
And I went into one professor's office and talked to another, and I was just basically booted out of their office. They didn't say I was wrong, they just said they didn't want to read it.
Right.
And so it tells them a lot of what they were doing is, I guess the best word would be incomplete.
Hmm.
And a lot of people don't want to be told that they're not looking at the whole thing.
Correct.
But the same school did put me into I've got an opportunity in that school to speak to their extension university. So I'm going to start
Hmm.
to work out of the extension university here.
Okay. Okay. And my next question for you is that are there any ethical considerations in using advanced analytics like Me4D?
Yeah, well, I think it's the opposite of what you might think it is. That it's
Hmm.
not like it's going to reveal things that we don't want to know. It's going to prevent us from doing things that we shouldn't do.
Hmm.
So I think the ethical question is going to be for a lot of people is that why didn't you use hypernomics when you could use it?
Hmm.
It'll be eventually seen, I think, as being unethical to not use it.
Hmm.
Case in point, here in the United States and across the world, people sometimes have taxes that go too high. And then the places where the taxes are too high, people flee and they go to other places. Well,
Hmm.
this kind of analytics would tell you that no, you don't want to scare away the people that are rich that are paying
Hmm.
taxes. You want to draw them to you. So you have to be able to work with this and actually draw people to you. So the ethical consideration is that if you don't use hypernomics to analyze your market, you may actually markets, including the market for taxpayers,
Hmm.
you may actually be doing a disservice to your country
Hmm.
or to your company or to yourself if you don't do
Hmm.
that.
Hmm. Amazing. I grew up reading economics in college from what we used to call the Bible of economics, which is Introduction to Economics by Samuelson.
Yes.
Uh, my question is, given the impact hypernomics and Me4D could have in the world,
Yes.
what advice would you give to young economists interested in multidimensional market analysis?
Well, in my speech that I gave for my paper,
Hmm.
I made this point to about Paul Samuelson. I remember Paul Samuelson told us there's only one
Correct.
equilibrium point in a market where
Yeah.
supply and demand hit.
Yeah.
Well, here are 96 points in the business aircraft market, and they're
Hmm.
proceeding along just fine.
Right.
What's holding those prices up? Well, what's holding the prices up is the cabin volume and the speed and a few other
Hmm.
things.
Hmm.
And so my advice would be, you know, listen to what they're saying about that. It does work for certain situations, the law of supply and demand.
Hmm.
It'll work for the price of iron ore or gold or platinum, crude oil, but it won't work for products that have more than one feature.
Hmm.
And so if your professor says there's only one equilibrium point in the market, say, hey, I looked at this thing this guy named Howarth did, and I found there was 96 points in the business aircraft
Hmm.
market in 10 years. How do you explain that? And see what they say, because I have a way I explain this, but your results may vary, but they shouldn't,
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I would say is that
Hmm.
your young people should start to take up the cause. I mean, I'm just scratching the surface here.
Hmm.
One person figuring this out. It's kind of I make the analogy, this is a little bit like when Newton and Leibniz discovered calculus
Hmm.
back hundreds of years ago. Well,
Hmm.
they couldn't really open up a calculus shop back then. There were only a few people that could use it, but you can't go from here to the moon unless you start knowing the calculus and all the
Correct.
equations that come out of that. It's going to be hard for you to go into your markets without understanding hypernomics going
Hmm.
forward.
Hmm. Well said. So time for two more questions. My next question
Okay.
is, what message do you want readers to take away from your book, Hypernomics?
Well, the message I would say is, don't take my word for it about what I'm telling you here. I'm telling you what I've seen based on the tools that I have available to me and
Hmm.
the things I've been able to work out.
Hmm.
Find out for yourself if you believe in the law of supply and demand or the law of value and demand, which is what we call it,
Hmm.
and make your own discoveries. So this is, as I said, we're just starting our journey into this new field. It's intellectually very exciting for a lot of people to go off into figuring out a brand new application for it. Figure
Hmm.
it out for yourself and see if it works for you. If it doesn't, don't use it. But
Yeah.
my bet is that it'll work for you too.
Hmm. Well said. And my last question to you, Doug, given the work that you are doing in the area of hypernomics, what would you like your legacy to be in the field
Well,
of
I'd like to
economics?
be I'd like to be thought of as the person that discovered this and brought it to the world.
Hmm.
I believe it'll make the world better.
Hmm.
Dr. Clayton Christensen, professor at Harvard, once said that 95% of all new product ideas fail, which is a
Hmm.
different way of saying 5% succeed.
Hmm.
Well, what happens if entrepreneur after entrepreneur starts to read this book and pick up the stuff and take that success rate from 5% to 6% to 7%
Hmm.
and so on? Well, the world is going to have
Yeah.
fewer instances where they
Correct.
just basically set money on fire. They're going to be able to make the world a better place. So
Amazing.
I'd like to make the world a better place with this. That's my goal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And on that note, Doug, I just want to say thank you so much for talking to me about your journey. I think I've learned so many new things in my conversation with you on hypernomics. Thank you for this incredible example of washing machine. I think you illustrated it so easily, so simply, uh, and yet such a complex challenge, which my viewers and listeners, I'm sure, will appreciate. Thank you for talking to me about Me4D and for sharing your model on our show. I think this is going to be a new thing for all our viewers and listeners. And finally, thank you so much for all the thoughts that you have shared with us in the area of hypernomics and economics. Thank you
Well,
again and
Ashutosh,
good luck.
yes. Ashutosh, thank you so much for having me on. It was my great pleasure to be on your show. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.